In the quiet suburbs of Grand Rapids, Michigan, a nursing home became the unlikely stage for one of America's most chilling true crime sagas. The story of Gwendolyn Gale Graham, a nurse's aide, is a haunting exploration of manipulation, murder, and betrayal. Graham, alongside her partner Kathy Wood, left a trail of devastation in the late 1980s, targeting the most vulnerable members of society, elderly patients entrusted to their care. This expanded account delves deeply into the lives of the killers, their twisted relationship, the murders they committed, and the societal vulnerabilities that enabled their crimes. Born in 1963 in California, Gwendolyn Gale Graham was the product of a fractured and abusive household. From a young age, she experienced emotional neglect and physical abuse, which left deep psychological scars. Described as introverted and troubled, Graham found it difficult to form healthy relationships. She carried an air of fragility that masked the storm brewing within her. As she grew older, Graham moved to Michigan, seeking to escape her turbulent past. She took a job at Alpine Manor Nursing Home in Walker, Michigan, where she cared for elderly residents. The role appeared to be an opportunity for a fresh start, but instead, it became the setting for a descent into depravity. At Alpine Manor, Graham met Kathy Wood, another nurse's aide. Wood, older and more dominant, quickly became the driving force in their relationship. Wood's personality contrasted sharply with Graham's. She was manipulative and controlling, exploiting Graham's insecurities to create a toxic dynamic. Their relationship deepened into a romantic partnership, marked by a mutual fascination with morbid and dark topics. What began as inappropriate humor escalated into something far more sinister. Graham, desperate for love and approval, became increasingly susceptible to Wood's influence. By 1986, Graham and Wood's relationship had taken a chilling turn. Their shared fascination with death evolved into an obsession. Wood later claimed that Graham introduced the idea of murder as a way to spice up their bond and solidify their connection. Whether Graham or Wood was the instigator remains a point of contention, but the outcome was undeniably horrifying. Their first victim was an elderly woman suffering from dementia. Graham smothered her with a washcloth while Wood served as a lookout. The victim's death was recorded as natural causes, a grim testament to how easily the pair exploited the vulnerabilities of their workplace. Over the course of several months, Graham and Wood claimed the lives of at least 5 residents. Their victims were all elderly women, many bedridden and unable to defend themselves. The killers chose their targets carefully, selecting those whose deaths would not arouse suspicion. Graham reportedly carried out the killings, smothering her victims with pillows or washcloths, while Wood watched or assisted. The murders became a grotesque game for the pair. They referred to their victims by the first letters of their names, attempting to spell out the word murder. The thrill of the killings wasn't limited to the act itself. Graham and Wood began collecting small trinkets from their victims' rings, necklaces, and other personal items. These trophies served as chilling reminders of their crimes and symbols of their power over life and death. Despite their shared crimes, the relationship between Graham and Wood began to deteriorate. Wood's manipulative tendencies and Graham's growing independence created tension. By 1987, Graham had started a new romantic relationship with another woman, leaving Wood feeling abandoned and betrayed. This fracture in their bond set the stage for betrayal. Wood, resentful and angry, began to distance herself from Graham. Eventually, she confided in her ex-husband, Ken Wood, revealing the murders in shocking detail. Ken Wood, horrified by Kathy's confession, went to the authorities. At first, the police were skeptical. The idea that nurses' aides could be serial killers seemed implausible. However, Wood's detailed accounts of the murders' names, methods, and timelines prompted a deeper investigation. By this point, many of the victims had been cremated, making physical evidence scarce. However, investigators found enough inconsistencies in the nursing home's records to warrant further action. Graham, who had moved to Texas, was arrested in 1988 and extradited to Michigan. Graham's trial in 1989 became a media sensation, drawing attention to the horrors that had unfolded at Alpine Manor. Prosecutors painted Graham as a cold-blooded killer who exploited her position to target society's most vulnerable. Kathy Wood testified against Graham in exchange for a plea deal. Her testimony was chilling, describing how she and Graham had turned murder into a bonding ritual. Wood portrayed herself as a reluctant participant, claiming Graham had coerced her into the crimes. Graham, in contrast, maintained her innocence, accusing Wood of being the mastermind. However, the jury found her guilty of 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Wood's involvement in the murders sparked intense debate. While she did not physically kill the victims, her role in planning and enabling the crimes made her complicit. Critics argued that her plea deal allowed her to escape true justice. In 1989, Wood was sentenced to 20 to 40 years for second-degree murder. She served 29 years before being released on parole in 2020, a decision that reignited public outrage. The dynamic between Graham and Wood has been analyzed extensively. Their relationship exhibited signs of folie à deux, a condition in which 2 individuals share delusional beliefs or behaviors. Graham's actions suggest a desperate need for validation and control, likely stemming from her abusive upbringing. Wood, on the other hand, displayed manipulative tendencies, exploiting Graham's vulnerabilities for her own gain. Their shared fascination with death created a dangerous feedback loop, with each enabling the other's darkest impulses. This dynamic underscores the complexity of criminal partnerships, where individual motivations become entangled in shared delusions. The murders at Alpine Manor highlighted critical vulnerabilities in elder care facilities. The lack of oversight and accountability allowed Graham and Wood to commit their crimes undetected for months. For the families of the victims, the pain of loss is compounded by the knowledge of how their loved ones suffered. Advocacy groups have since called for stricter regulations and better training for caregivers to prevent similar tragedies. The story of Gwendolyn Graham and Kathy Wood serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can exist behind closed doors. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, the dynamics of manipulation, and the fragility of trust. As we remember the victims of Alpine Manor, we are reminded of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and justice in protecting society's most vulnerable. The legacy of this case endures as a stark warning of the consequences of unchecked power and the enduring pursuit of justice. The loved ones of the victims faced an unimaginable reality. They had entrusted their elderly family members to Alpine Manor, believing they would be cared for with dignity and compassion. The revelation that these individuals had been murdered by those sworn to protect them shattered their sense of trust. For some families, the lack of physical evidence due to cremation only deepened their anguish. They were left with unanswered questions and an overwhelming sense of guilt, wondering if they had unknowingly subjected their loved ones to suffering. Several families became vocal advocates for elder care reform, demanding increased oversight in nursing homes. They pushed for policies that would ensure better training for staff, thorough background checks, and stricter monitoring of facilities. Their efforts underscored the need to protect vulnerable populations from similar atrocities. The case of Gwendolyn Graham and Kathy Wood revealed glaring weaknesses in the elder care system. At the time, nursing homes like Alpine Manor operated with minimal scrutiny, prioritizing efficiency over thoroughness. Staff turnover was high, and those in charge often lacked the resources to properly vet employees. This environment created the perfect storm for individuals like Graham and Wood to thrive. Their crimes were facilitated not only by their cunning but also by the systemic failings of the healthcare system. Investigators and advocacy groups alike pointed out how understaffed and overburdened facilities could overlook signs of abuse or misconduct. In response to the case, Michigan lawmakers and elder care organizations began pushing for reforms. The Alpine Manor murders became a catalyst for legislative changes, including mandatory reporting of suspicious deaths and regular inspections of nursing homes. While these changes were significant, they came too late for the victims and their grieving families. When Kathy Wood was granted parole in 2020 after serving 29 years, it reignited public debate about her role in the murders. Many viewed her as equally culpable as Graham, despite her claims of being a passive participant. Victims' families and elder care advocates strongly opposed her release, arguing that her freedom undermined the severity of her crimes. Some questioned whether the justice system had adequately held her accountable, while others worried about the precedent her release might set for similar cases. For Wood, life after prison was far from normal. Her notoriety followed her, making it difficult to reintegrate into society. The conditions of her parole were strict, ensuring she remained under supervision. However, the families of the victims found little solace in this, believing that true justice had not been served. The psychological dynamic between Graham and Wood continues to fascinate criminologists and psychologists. Their relationship was not merely one of mutual influence, it was a toxic power struggle disguised as love. Graham's need for emotional validation made her susceptible to Wood's manipulative tendencies. Wood, in turn, used Graham's vulnerabilities to maintain control over her. This interplay of dependency and dominance created a fertile ground for their shared delusions to fester. Experts have drawn parallels between their relationship and other infamous criminal duos, such as Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate, or Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. In such cases, the partners often amplify each other's darker tendencies, creating a cycle of escalating violence. While the Alpine Manor case spurred important changes, the fight for better elder care is far from over. Advocates continue to highlight the need for comprehensive reforms, including ensuring that caregivers are equipped to handle the complexities of elder care with professionalism and empathy. Identifying potential employees with histories of abuse or criminal behavior. Requiring staff to report any suspicious activity or deaths to prevent cover-ups. Conducting unannounced visits to nursing homes to ensure compliance with safety standards. These measures aim to create a safer environment for elderly residents and prevent future tragedies. The case of Gwendolyn Graham and Kathy Wood forces us to confront unsettling questions about human nature. How could individuals entrusted with care and compassion commit such heinous acts? What conditions allow such evil to flourish unnoticed? For many, the story of the Alpine Manor murders is a cautionary tale. It serves as a reminder of the importance of vigilance in institutions that care for vulnerable populations. It also underscores the dangers of unchecked power, toxic relationships, and societal neglect. As we reflect on this case, we must remember the victims, those who lived out their final days in fear and pain. Their memory serves as a call to action, urging us to build a society that values and protects its most vulnerable members. Decades after the murders, the story of Gwendolyn Graham and Kathy Wood continues to haunt the collective memory of Kent County, Michigan. The Alpine Manor nursing home, now under a different name, serves as a chilling reminder of the horrors that unfolded within its walls. For the families of the victims, the pain remains fresh. They carry the weight of their loss, forever scarred by the knowledge of what happened to their loved ones. The release of Kathy Wood only deepened their wounds, leaving them grappling with feelings of injustice and betrayal. The case has inspired books, documentaries, and psychological studies, ensuring that the story of Graham and Wood will not be forgotten. It stands as both a dark chapter in the history of true crime and a stark warning of the dangers that can lurk behind seemingly ordinary facades. In the end, the Alpine Manor murders remind us that evil can take many forms, sometimes quiet, sometimes hidden, but always devastating. Through remembrance and reform, we honor the victims and strive to prevent such tragedies from happening again.